On this special bracket preview edition of Prime Sports College Hoops, brought to you by Covers.com and uwager.eu, we'll go inside the entire bracket for the college basketball tournament with seed predictions, futures, Cinderellas, our Final Four picks, and much more as Prime Sports College Hoops on the Prime Sports Radio Network starts now. All right, Monday, March 12th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma, and before we get started, make sure to visit Covers Experts. That's experts.covers.com for the very best in sports betting information. And for a limited time only, you're going to get 50% off any purchase by using promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. And if you're looking for somewhere to wager and get fast, reliable payouts, just click on the UWager banner on our website, and you can get started with wagering on this week's NCAA tournament and more with a special $100 risk-free wager if you sign up this week when you deposit $100 minimum into your account. All right, so we've got a long show for you. So we have three analysts and me, as we're going to give you as many different points of view as we can. I got a whole bunch of questions to ask my analysts, so when you're filling out your brackets, and you better wait before you fill them out, you've got time. So this is a good show to get as much in-depth information as we can provide for you. Let's first welcome my co-host to the show, and Mr. Scott Zolatoro. Scott, we're finally here, so pretty pumped, huh?
I mean, this is the day. Well, yesterday is the day that every college basketball fan live for and wait for. Of course, CBS went and ruined yesterday for us, but now that we're all over that, we're all just excited for what's to come over the next 24 days.
Yep, definitely we can get into the broadcast yesterday, but no reason to get into it just yet because we want to start the show with our covers experts and get right to it. So we're going to get Steve Morrill's point of view on the tournament, pro sports handicapper for covers experts at Covers.com, your one-stop shop for current and accurate sports gaming information. Steve, good to talk to you again.
Hey, great to be back.
All right, Steve. So let's get right into it. I gave you a bunch of questions I wanted answers to. So let's shoot right on down the line, and let's start with the fact that we know there's going to be some low-seeded teams that are going to win. We just never know when that's going to happen. So between the seeds 9 through 15, because I'm not going to ask you to take a 16 seed. So between seeds 9 and 15. Give me one of those seeded teams that you like the most. Which is your favorite lower seed? Let's even say to get started off with the first round.
Yeah, one thing you got to keep in mind about the seedings, with the pod system the last 4 or 5 years, that the seeds aren't necessarily in order of the best teams in the country. They play a lot of games now with the matchups they want to get, also with keeping teams near their home cities. So a lot of times you can find value with teams that maybe are underseeded or playing against teams that are overseeded. And that's one of the reasons why you're always going to see, a double-digit seed make an advance to the Sweet 16 and sometimes further. Another thing to keep in mind is the powerhouse teams are definitely the 1, 2, sometimes the 3 seeds. Almost all national champs come from those seedings. So when you're looking at some of these longer shots, I like to look in the 11-12 range. And as we know, everybody talks about it, that a 12 seed always beats a 5 seed every year. But another thing that you got to keep in mind is most of those 11 and 12s are at-large teams still. They were good enough to get in the tournament without having to necessarily win their conference tournament. Not always the case, but most of the time. And also, when you're talking about the 11 and 12 seeds, they have much more favorable matchups into the Sweet 16 because they're taking on, 5s and 6s, and then if they win, they're getting maybe a 3. They're avoiding those 1 seeds in the second round, I guess is my point. So one that I like that's an 11 seed this year is Loyola Chicago, a 28 and 5 team. I think they can take on Miami of Florida in that first game. I thought the ACC was down a notch this year. And then they most likely play Tennessee, who plays as Wright State. Assuming they play Tennessee in the second round, I think they can get the Volunteers also. Tennessee had to go all the way to Sunday and then lose to Kentucky in the SEC championship. And as we all know, the SEC was also down a notch this season. So just looking from a scheduling dynamic, I think it sets up pretty well for a good and underrated Loyola Chicago team as an 11 seed to go for at least a few rounds.
What do you think about that, Scott? Because Milton Doyle, we talked about Loyola last week. He leaves. He's playing well for the Nets in Long Island, so you would think they'd be down a notch. But Wichita State leaves the conference, so that's a break for Loyola. They do have 5 double-digit scorers, so they're balanced, and they did beat Florida on the road.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that you and I both talked about in depth the other day, Greg. You mentioned it's a down ACC and maybe a down SEC, but this is the worst Missouri Valley Conference in a decade. So I don't think that I'm not trusting Loyola, who had to beat bad Northern Iowa, decent, very very slightly decent. Like Indiana State, but mostly just a bunch of bad teams in the Missouri Valley. I don't know if I could trust them to get by Miami, who had some major wins, including that huge one at North Carolina.
Yeah, the only thing, Steve, is Loyola. One thing I'm concerned with Loyola is Clayton Custer. Now he's the conference player of the year, yet he's only scored 23 points in his last 4 games. They beat Florida. He only scores 4 points in the game. So what is it about Loyola that you like specifically when you've watched them play? Give me something.
No, it's not necessarily Loyola. Like I'm saying, it's the matchups of the Sweet 16. They're only a 1.5 point underdog against Miami of Florida, so they obviously can beat them. They have about a 46% chance mathematically, according to the odds makers, of winning that game. So that's not much of an upset. It's not that I'm huge on Loyola as a team. I just think they have a good path to the Sweet 16 if you look at the setup. Miami of Florida is a team that's been decent this year, but I don't think they're barn burners. And once again, the point spread is showing that with them only as a 1.5 point favorite as a 6 seed.
So you're going with you're basically going with the numbers, which is what a good handicapper does. And by the way, let's keep in mind that Miami, even though he has been out for quite a while, they're without Bruce Brown. He's been out since late January, and that's a big guy to be out of the lineup for Miami. They're not exactly at all cylinders going into the tournament. All right, next question, Steve, and let's go ahead with pick one double-digit seed to reach the Sweet 16, which you've already done, right? So you've already answered that. What is Loyola, by the way? What are they, 11, you said?
Yeah, one thing I'll point out about Loyola, since we'll use them for this question as well, is that they play at one of the slowest tempos of any team in the tournament. We talked about this last week, Greg. One of the things I like about Virginia, we talked about Michigan last week, how they played a slow tempo. That's a really good matchup for these teams because especially when you're playing that second game with just 1 day of prep time, it's very difficult for opponents to prepare for that. So that's another reason I think they have a chance against Tennessee as one of the best defensive teams in the country, is that that's going to be an ugly, slow-down half-court game.
Okay.
And those are the type of teams you want to look for here as double-digit seeds. So Loyola fits that mold. And if you're looking at some other long shots, you want them to be good half-court defensive teams because, as you said, the Missouri Valley's down. Athletically, they're not as good as Miami. They're not as talented as Tennessee and SEC team. But if they can ugly it up, which I think they can do, they can make some noise for that reason.
And by the way, Steve will send you his complete NCAA bracket of all 63 games for free. It's normally a $25 charge to any of our listeners out there that emails him and mentions the show. You can email Steve at prosportsinfo.com. Again, Steve at prosportsinfo.com. Let's get to, I wanted you to pick a number 4 seed or higher to win the national championship.
Yeah, this one is, this could go either way. Obviously Gonzaga is a team year in and year out that's always in the mix. And last year, last few years, they've been contenders. They've been 1 seeds. Now as a 4 seed, I think we maybe actually get some value. I've always felt when they were a 1 seed, they were a bit overvalued because of that weak conference schedule they play. Almost feel at 30-4 now being a 4 seed, they may be a little bit undervalued. I don't think they'll have much trouble with UNC Greensboro in the first round. I think they catch a break with Ohio State in the second round. And then they're going to have to get by, which I feel is the most phony number 1 seed in the tournament, and that's Xavier. And last week we touched on this as well. We talked about Villanova and Xavier, Greg, and I mentioned that I just did not feel like Xavier was a true number 1.
Yeah.
They're not even in the top 10 in some of my power ratings. And I was shocked, especially with them losing to Providence, not even making the conference finals last weekend, that they made a number 1 seed. And here again, I think this is what I'm talking about, with sometimes the seeds aren't very telling. They didn't really have anybody to stick out there in the West this year because the Pac-12 was down so much. And I really feel like Xavier probably isn't a true number one, but they didn't want to penalize another team and stick them out there. So for that reason, I can think this sets up very well for Gonzaga to get to the Elite Eight. And, North Carolina could be the team they face. I actually think Michigan as a 3 seed is probably the most dangerous team in that region. So if they get by Michigan, I think Gonzaga has a pretty good spot to be in the Final Four.
Yeah, you mentioned Gonzaga a few weeks ago for the first time, Scott, on this show. And, the more I watched them play and the more I really looked into them, I realized, you know what, this year it's a down year overall. And look, all you got to do is take a look at Xavier. What were they, an 11 seed last year? Now they're a 1 seed. So that shows you the difference between last year and this year in college basketball. But I do believe in Gonzaga, especially at a solid 22-1 to win the national championship. That's not a bad number at all for that team.
No, Steve, I pretty much agree with everything you just said, especially about Xavier. Obviously, we get into that more later on, but I love how the NCAA, how the committee justified that by giving Providence a 10 seed, which is just a joke.
Yep.
A team that was on a lot of teams, Final Four in. They didn't get a play-in game. They got a 10 seed. I think that Gonzaga certainly has a great shot here. I don't think UNC Greensboro. I saw the video of them getting real excited when they heard their name called. They knew it was going to be called, but the fact that Gonzaga is just right down the road in Boise, it just seems cruel for Greensboro. And then I do think I like them over Ohio State or South Dakota State and over Xavier.
Yeah, South Dakota State might actually not. They could be a pretty interesting first-round game against Ohio State.
Always are. They
Yeah.
always are.
So watch out for South Dakota State. Okay, now, Steve, give me a 7 seed or higher to reach the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm keeping the same theme here. We're in the same region. I'm going to go with Missouri. That's an 8 seed.
Wow.
They get by Florida State. They play Xavier in that second round. Once again, I'm anti-Xavier. So, this is what we talked about earlier. It's not always about necessarily the best teams or the most dangerous teams. It's about the matchups because these are one-and-done tournaments, and sometimes you can avoid playing the better teams. Both Gonzaga and Missouri get the weakest number one in Xavier, who is really a 3 or a 4 seed based on most of my power ratings. And they're going to be fortunate enough to play them instead of playing someone like, say, Virginia in the second round or Villanova, the other team from that conference in the second round. So I think Missouri could make some noise for that reason because I think, once again, Xavier is a weak duckling here. So that's why I like Gonzaga as the 4. I like Missouri as the 8, both in the top half of that West bracket. And it's a theme we'll continue to use here in the tournament. Obviously Xavier's dangerous offensively, but they play fast, not as good defensively. And that's why I think they're very vulnerable, and that's just how you have to look at the brackets. You try to find the weaker teams and find some upsets that could correlate with that.
By the way, our bracketologist, Jamal Murphy, will join us in about 10 minutes or so, and we'll continue to go through the entire bracket region by region with Scott and Jamal. All right, Steve, let's talk about your true Cinderella to win the national championship. Give me a Cinderella. Give me something for us to go. I mean, it's been since Raleigh Massimino and Jim Valvano since we've been able to go true Cinderella. So give me something to win the national championship if it can happen.
Yeah, I mean, most likely it won't. As I mentioned, 1, 2, and 3 seeds win over 80% of the tournaments since they went to the 64-team format and over 30-some years ago. So it doesn't happen very often. I mean, I guess a true Cinderella, you don't even feel like an 8 seed is a true Cinderella anymore because, we saw Kentucky a couple years ago go really far as an 8 seed. Alabama is a 9 seed. Obviously, they've been playing better down the stretch. It was really impressive what they did with Auburn in the second half of that SEC tournament game a few days ago. They'd have to get by Villanova, though, in the second round. They also have West Virginia in that half of the bracket. So even though, Alabama's the team people are talking about, I think they have a very difficult bracket there. Once again, I'll go back to Loyola as an 11 seed. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think they have a very fortunate matchup. They're only a 1.5-point underdog against Miami of Florida in the first game. They play a slow half-court style, so they could get by Tennessee in that second round. And then I think they get pretty fortunate once again because they most likely would face Cincinnati, the 2 seed in the Sweet 16.
That'd be an ugly game.
And Cincinnati, that'd be a very ugly, low-scoring game. So. Yeah. When you're looking for matchups like this, and we always talk about how the 1 seeds never lost to a 16. Keep in mind when it almost happened years ago was Princeton, when they almost beat Georgetown, and it was a low-scoring, ugly game. So, it's not going to happen. But if you're looking at matchups, I think as an 11 seed, Loyola has a real chance to make some noise because it's a very favorable bracket for them because they get Tennessee and then Cincinnati, and then they'd be in the finals against Virginia, who also in the regional finals against Virginia, who plays extremely slow as well.
Yeah,
so
maybe it's a choke. Yeah, if Virginia's a big favorite over a team like Loyola. We've seen Virginia choke before. Okay, a couple more things before I let you go, Steve. Give us your final four picks.
Yeah, once again, we talk about these long shots and we talk about some teams that are fun to watch, but most likely it's going to be the cream that rises to the top. The Virginia Cavaliers, I do feel, have been the best team in college basketball this year. They have a tough region, but their style is very difficult come tournament time. And my pure power ratings right now, I've got Villanova and Duke after them, so I like them as well. I think this sets up well for them. I'm anti-Xavier, of course, in the other bracket, so I think it probably sets up for North Carolina. And I also think North Carolina has a pretty favorable matchup down there. The only thing I'm worried about Carolina would be in that eventual Sweet 16 matchup against Michigan, the 3 seed. So I think it'll be Duke, Villanova, and Virginia, and then either North Carolina or Michigan out of that other bracket.
All right, and who are you going to pick to win the national championship?
Once again, I hate going with favorites because it seems obvious, but I think a team like Virginia really sets up well for the tournament. For some reason, my gut tells me they probably won't. But my power ratings have them number one. They're a well-coached team, and I love teams that play that half-court, ugly defensive style that I keep talking about. Virginia does that better than anybody, so I think Virginia's the team to beat. After that, I'd have Villanova and then Duke.
All right, and they are, by the way, 5-1 co-favorites with Villanova to win the national championship. And then the final question I have for you, Steve, are future picks. So if you had 5 $100 wagers to select either regionals or championships, and again, with Virginia, if you want to put $100 on them to get 5, at least that gets you even in case you don't hit the other 4. So you could do that. Which 5 wagers would you make if somebody gave you 5 $100 individual wagers to make for either regionals or just national championship?
Yeah, obviously there's not a ton of value at 5 or 6 to 1 with teams like Villanova and Virginia, but I think they're the 2 to beat. So I'd want to have them out there just because it doesn't do much good if you're getting a 50 to 1 payoff if it loses.
You're absolutely right.
I think those 2 are probably good bets. I think Duke actually at 8 to 1. They're one of the few teams that rank top 10 efficiency in both offense and defense. So I think Duke could actually be a little bit of a sleeper. It's funny to say Duke's a sleeper, but I feel like they're flying a bit under the radar right now, especially after losing to North Carolina, not even making the conference finals. I like both Carolina and Michigan as the one to get out of that other bracket. North Carolina and Michigan are both 15 to 1, so I do one of those. And then if you're looking for a bit of a longer shot that we haven't talked about, West Virginia at 44 to 1. We talked about this a bit last week. West Virginia had the best scoring margin in the Big 12 conference games this year, better than Kansas even. They led Kansas by 8 in the middle of the second half. The other 9 then lost by 9, kind of fell apart there. Another team that's tough come tournament time, especially in those quick turnaround games with just one day to prepare for that pressure defense. Of all the teams we've talked about, West Virginia at over 40 to 1 might be a decent long shot pick if you're looking for a bigger payout.
Well, I'll give you a sneak peek. I have West Virginia in my Final Four. So I like that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope. All right, Steve, appreciate it. And again, I want to let everybody know once again, if they're interested, and hopefully they are because they're filling out their brackets. And if they're filling out their brackets, hopefully they're listening to this show. And you've got your complete 63-game bracket available free to any listener, normally a $25 value. Send you an email at steve@prosportsinfo.com. And you will go ahead and give him the bracket for free. Again, just mention the show here, Prime Sports College Hoops, on the Prime Sports Radio Network. And, Steve, I really appreciate it. We look forward to talking to you again during the tournament. Best of luck and enjoy the game starting tomorrow night.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Hey, take care. That is Steve Morrill. Again, covers.com. And we want to, as usual, shout out to Covers. They do such a great job with all their experts. And once again, you can go to their website. Go to experts.covers.com. You can check them out there. That's where they list all of their top handicappers there at that page. And as we mentioned at the top, you can get 50% off any purchase by using promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. Okay, Scott. So Jamal will be joining us shortly. What did you think about some of the things that Steve said? Because Steve was leaning towards those slower-paced teams, the Virginias, and I kind of think maybe this is Virginia's year to get to the Final Four, to tell you the truth. But what do you think about some of the other things he said? Missouri as a potential sleeper into the Final Four.
I'm one of those guys who thought that Missouri shouldn't have been as high as an 8. If Missouri got an 8, based off of what they could have done with Porter playing all season, and Notre Dame should have been in, based off what they did with Bonzie Colson, and then what they did without him. So I thought that was too high for them. I think that there's a lot that gives advantage to slow-paced teams like Virginia, Cincinnati. I can't believe they put them both in the same bracket. That's unbelievable.
Great television.
I thought Cincinnati actually should have been the one over Xavier. So we'll get into that more later. But I think that teams that can run and gun, they have to be on, obviously, to beat the teams like Virginia and Nova and Cincinnati and West Virginia as well. But I think I could see. I don't see West Virginia in the Final Four as when we get to the bracket breakdown later on. But I don't think it's a Virginia's year either, though.
All right. So yeah, because I mean it's actually pretty unique to get 3 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. Okay, since 1979, there have only been 4 times. That's it, 4 times that we've had 3 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. So it doesn't happen.
This is not the year, because
this
is we keep saying all year this is a down year, and that any of the top 4 seeds, in my opinion, can beat any of the top 4 seeds on any given day in any arena even. And you'll see when we get to mine that I actually have 2 4 seeds at the moment. I have 2 4 seeds in the Final Four. So I don't see it being 1 seed. After everybody's bashing Xavier, who would be totally shocked if Xavier comes out and makes the Final Four?
I don't think so. I think you know what it is. It's the seeding. It's that as an 11 seed, as a Cinderella. Oh, they're a cute story. They make a run. They're an under the radar team. We know they're better than people think. But as a 1 seed, I mean, that's really stretching it, I think, and that's the problem.
No, and I thought that Duke and Cincinnati deserved 1 over Xavier. I can't believe a team that lost that didn't make the conference final and lost to another 1 seed by a combined 48 points. How they could be considered? How could the team that lost to Villanova by a combined 48 points be considered on the same even plane as them? It doesn't make sense. And then, like I said, they justified giving Xavier a 1 by giving Providence a 10, a team who was a bubble team for most of the last 3 weeks. I couldn't believe it. I thought Providence definitely deserved to be a play-in team. I don't think some of the play-in teams even belong in the field, and I thought that St. Bonaventure deserved to be a 10, or UCLA deserved to be a 10 over Providence.
Okay, now before we get into breaking down the bracket in full, the bubble teams, we always have a little bit of controversy there, and
always. I think this is one of those biggest years that we've had in a long time.
Yeah, and I'm really sick and tired of hearing the explanations from the committee people, because it's nonsense. It really is. They just say whatever they want to say, because they can't explain. They never explain it right, because they can't. I mean, again, it's a personal point of view. That's all it is. And I really am starting to think that maybe it's better that they do come up with a set criteria, like something that is set in stone, so we don't have a committee. But hey, you know what? We have it in college football too for 4 teams. They never seem to get it right there either. So it is what it is, and it is a surprise.
I thought football actually got it right this past year. First of all, there were several things that happened which forced the committee to do stuff like this. There was obviously the 3 huge mid-majors where the long-time favorite did not win. Obviously, and that just crushed everything, and it cost Middle Tennessee, their tournament. But Davidson, a team that was out, they were out. They won the A-10. That was, pretty shocking to me. San Diego State beat Nevada, a team that you and me, we barely even talked about that conference when we were going over the conference tournaments, as we thought Nevada was, far and away better. and that was just another, huge one. And of course, Middle Tennessee, and it cost them. So of those three, 2 teams got in, 2 extra bubble teams got knocked out.
Yeah, you know what? And if that would happen, and if there would have been a couple of teams that okay, we felt, well, maybe they don't deserve it, that would have been fine. Okay, 2 teams knocked them out. It happens. But that doesn't bother me. What bothers me are decisions like Oklahoma over Oklahoma State and Syracuse over Notre Dame. Those things bother the hell out of me because there is no reasonable explanation for doing that, because what they're doing is they are spending way too much time on data instead of the eye test and just common sense. The common sense is if Team A beats Team B, Team A is better. And if Team B, like Syracuse, can't even beat Team A when Team A is out without their 2 top players.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And Syracuse loses their last 3 games by double digits. In a game they know is important, they lose by 19 points in the second round of the ACC tournament. Again, Notre Dame, without Colson and Farrell, beats them in Syracuse. Notre Dame beats Virginia Tech in the second round of the ACC tournament when they knew how big that was. So they did their part. Syracuse didn't. And, of course, the whole thing with Colson and with Farrell being out, especially Colson, I mean, it's like they just completely want to ignore that. Like, oh, well, we don't know what's going to happen if he play. I mean, I don't even know what kind of explanation they possibly had for Syracuse over Notre Dame.
I think the seedings between 10 and 11 this year were just absolutely terrible. Like I mentioned, Providence should have been in that playing game. I feel like it's like the NCAA tournament knew that. I think it was it last year that Providence had to play it? Yeah, they had a play-in game last year, so they're like, oh, we can't make them do the play-in thing twice in a row. If they were going to put Oklahoma in, and obviously we'll get into Oklahoma more and more, they should have been a play-in. Arizona State shouldn't have been in at all, in my opinion. I think UCLA and St. Bonaventure both could have been 10s. And then Syracuse, like you said, Notre Dame, I thought should have made it over Syracuse. The fact that the NCAA this year, the committee basically told us that they reward you having one good half of a season and then a terrible half of the season, because that's what both Arizona State and Oklahoma did. I don't think either one of them deserved to be in.
Especially the second half of the season. That's what really irks you, because it was just not too long ago. I could have sworn I remember them like sitting there explaining how important it was to go into the tournament playing well. What happened to that?
Well, Oklahoma's just the second team since 1992. Well, I guess the first team since 1992 to have a 1-8 or worse February and make the tournament. And that was the 1992 Arizona Wildcats. So, and I don't think that team won the national championship. Look, this is the Trae Young, the darling story. If you notice,
no, you're right. That's what it is.
And it's the very first game. I can't believe they did that too. It's the very first game that isn't the first 4 game. It's the 12-15 game on Thursday on CBS because of Trae Young.
Yeah, big surprise.
Look, it's a good matchup, and I mean, I'll pick Rhode Island 100 out of 100 times in this matchup. So, I mean, without getting ahead of ourselves, I know we're going to go through the bracket. I'm picking Rhode Island. I mean, it's just ridiculous that Oklahoma made the tournament. And then, of course, again, CBS justifies that by giving the very first game, the one that everybody's so excited to turn on. It's the first one on the best day of the year, that Thursday of the NCAA tournament on CBS. It's not a True TV or even a TNT or a TBS. It's on CBS. Of course, it'll probably be Jim Nantz and company, because Duke's the follow-up game for that, so they love that. But, boy, I just couldn't believe it when I saw Oklahoma. And I couldn't believe it. Look, I understand not putting Oklahoma State in, but there were teams more worthy than Oklahoma and Arizona State that did not make it.
Well, again, the thing is if you don't want to put Oklahoma State in, fine, but you can't put Oklahoma in. That's the thing. You cannot do that when Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma twice, and Oklahoma State beat Kansas twice and won at West Virginia. I don't care what their RPI is. I don't care what their strength of schedule is. It's not that they weren't that. See, I understand if a team is like, all right, well, what if they're 17 and 15 and the other team is 18 and 14? I mean, let's just say one of those teams barely deserves to get in because of their overall record. All right, well, sometimes that happens. Sometimes mediocre teams just beat good teams. But Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were so close when you looked at their resumes that because they were so close, how do you take Oklahoma over Oklahoma State except for Trae Young? That's it. That's the only reason. Sorry. And then what Steve said at the beginning of the show about matchups and things of that nature, I mean, it was funny. The other day, I think they had talked about that. One of the interviewers asked one of the committee guys about it, and he was like, "Oh, I tell you right now, we never ever take into account matchups. Never." I mean, that just shows you what absolute liars they are. I mean, you're telling me that it's an absolute coincidence that the Hurleys are in the same mini region as Duke?
No.
I mean, seriously,
yeah.
I mean, come on. That just shows you there. And you know what? You know what it needs? It needs young people. That's what it needs. They need to have guys like Jay Billis. Like, they should take the top analysts from the top networks, have them make these decisions, not some retired 70-year-old guys.
Yeah, and look, how many times do we have to say throughout the conference tournament previews that it's like Lenardi drives these trains, and then they're like, yeah, that makes sense or whatever. And also the fact that they play these games, like some of these games on Sunday, and the committee doesn't even watch those games, like the conference championships on this past Sunday. Like, I still can't believe that Cincinnati is a 2. I can't believe they're a 2. I thought winning that conference with those teams, and they justified it by, and they proved themselves by making, Wichita State a 4. I thought they could have been a 3. I thought they were dangerous enough to be a 3. And I also thought that Houston could have been a 5 over maybe Ohio State or Kentucky even. I just can't believe that, or especially Clemson. They definitely could have been the 5 over Clemson.
Well, how does Virginia? I mean, they're supposed to be the number 1 ranked team in the country. Okay, so they're number 1 seed.
Cincinnati in their bracket.
No, not even before that. They have to take on Arizona. As a 4 seed.
Arizona, who when they play their best, could have been a 1 seed. They definitely could have been a 2 or a 3. They're a 4. And they have Cincinnati, and they have, in my opinion, the second best 3 in Tennessee, who's playing just lights out right now. I can't believe that they gave them that bracket when then you go ahead and you look at...
Yeah, Villanova's got the easiest. And I'm not saying Villanova is not one of the top teams, of course, but they're not number 1. And number 1 should have got the easiest. Number 1 should always get the easiest region, and it doesn't work out that way when it should. They shouldn't just blindly, in some circumstances, put these things together for whatever reason they're doing it. The number 1 criteria is, all right, let's make sure that when we put these brackets together, that the number 1 seed gets the easiest region, and Villanova is without question in the easiest region.
Yeah, and I'll even go a step further with Kentucky being the 5. This is
Kentucky too.
This has the classic Kentucky from the Wichita State as a 1 seed year. They've been playing absolutely outstanding the last 3-4 weeks. This is Coach Cal in his prime, knows how to get the best out of his players when it comes time to it, and that's so the fact that you're right, in the Sweet 16, the number 1 overall seed is going to have to play either Kentucky or Arizona is pretty cruel versus them having to play Wichita State or West Virginia, Clemson or Auburn. That's the biggest fraud 4-5 I've seen in a long time. Auburn struggled down the stretch, didn't deserve to be a 4. Clemson doesn't deserve to be a 5. And then Gonzaga, Ohio State also. So you're right. The best 4 and the best 5, in my opinion, are in the same region with the number 1 overall seed. And the best 2. And the best 2. Like I said, Cincinnati probably should have been the 1 over Xavier.
And as far as experts picks, I always like taking a look at a lot of the TV experts picks because they 90% of them always have the same picks. You look at...
But they sit in a meeting together and go, what can we do this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, most of them have a lot of them have Michigan State and Virginia. Matter of fact, on the ESPN show, 3 of them picked Michigan State to win the national championship. Now that surprised me. I mean, it's one thing to have Michigan State in the Final Four, but for 3 of the 4 experts on ESPN to pick Michigan State to win the national championship, that is, I mean, I think maybe they were just all talking to each other all year too much. You know how you start to like convince yourselves because you're talking to each other all year? I think that's what it is. I mean, how do you all predict Michigan State? And the other guy, Jay Williams, picked Michigan State to lose in the national championship game. So that was a little bit surprising. And good point by somebody that brought up the whole FBI investigation thing, that 3 of the teams that were on the bubble that didn't get in are all facing FBI investigations: Louisville, Oklahoma State, and USC.
Yeah, I mean.
And USC, I'm sorry. I know they got a couple of injuries to some guys, and they should be better. But I didn't even consider USC as a bubble team. They're playing in the championship game of the Pac-12. The game is the game is nearly tied with like 6-7 minutes to go in the game with Arizona, who's everybody's going giddy over, and they're not even in. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to tell. I don't even know what to tell you. And then St. Mary's didn't get in, which I don't completely feel sorry for, because if they're not, but if they're not going to schedule, which is the problem that I have as well, that you got to schedule, and that's a problem. And I don't know why they don't.
Well,
I mean,
the St. Mary's and Middle Tennessee are the kind of teams that Davidson, and San Diego State, it's because of those 2 wins that one of those 2 teams was out, because one of those 2 teams would have made it, because the NCAA loves having these darling teams like them. But the fact that I think St. Mary's can beat, 75% of the teams in this field. But you're right, they don't schedule them. They're in the WCC. I've said all season long, when are them and Gonzaga are just going to finally, find a way in the Mountain West, like you said, or the Pac-12, like I said. It's got to happen. It's got to happen for them. Look, Wichita State realized it wasn't going to work with them in the Missouri Valley, and look what happened with them. They shot up immediately. This Wichita State team won the Missouri Valley, they'd be a 2 or a 3 seed, and we'd all be saying, oh, that's wrong. They were in the Missouri Valley, but now they worked hard. They fought for that 4 seed. I thought they could have been a 3 seed even, and then I can't believe that. Like I said, I can't believe San Diego State is an 11. I thought that they should have been a play-in team. I know it's tough to have a conference winner go be a play-in and an 11, but boy, I couldn't believe them as an 11.
All right, let's go ahead and get into breaking down the regions now. We'll start with the South, then go on to the West, the East, and the Midwest. And let's start with Virginia, the overall number 1 seed, and in that region. And what I'll do too is at the end of this, then I'll ask you to give you answers to the same questions that I asked to Steve. But let's just go through these regions first, and I'm sure we'll find out some of the answers to those questions while we're at it. And sometimes it's not, because that could be a different answer entirely for whatever reason. But Virginia is my pick here to get to the Final Four. I'm just gonna do chalk here with Virginia and Cincinnati making it to the Elite Eight, and pretty much chalk throughout here, to tell you the truth. I'm gonna have the top 4 teams making it to the Sweet 16 too. I don't have chalk. I don't believe I have chalk anywhere else but here. So this is the only region that I have chalk.
I said screw the chalk pretty quickly. I like Virginia to make it to the Sweet 16 and lose to Arizona. I like Cincinnati to make it to the Elite. So I do like Arizona versus Cincinnati, but I do have a lot of first round upsets coming in this bracket. Let's put it that way, not huge upsets, but I like Texas over Nevada. I really think Texas has a couple of standout players. Mo Bamba coming back. He's he was banged up during the Big 12 tournament. He should be healthy now with the extra little rest they got from losing a little bit earlier. And again, I just feel terrible for Cincinnati as a 2 seed to get, stuck in this region with a good Tennessee, a good 6 in Miami. Miami's definitely the strongest 6, with maybe them in Houston. But I like Arizona to come out and win this region. I like them over Natty in the Elite Eight.
All right, so you're going to go with Arizona over Cincinnati in the Elite Eight, with Arizona making it to the Final Four. Let's move on.
With that Cincinnati-Tennessee game being a tough one.
Okay. Let's move on to the West. And here, now this is tough for me because, of course, I'm a Michigan fan, and we all know how hot they are. So it's kind of tough. Look, I don't think I got to tell you right now. I don't really believe that. I think I said this on the last show. I really think that this year's Michigan's team is better than last year's, and last year's nearly made the Final Four. So I do feel real confident that this Michigan team this year, with the teams that they would be considered, favorites, the Virginias and the Villanova, that this Michigan team can win the national championship. So I do feel that way, but I'm not going to pick them to get to the Final Four. But I do like them, and I've already put money on them, as you know, at 40-1 a few weeks ago. So I still believe them at 15-1. I would still do that, but I'm going to go ahead, and because this is actually a region where I like a few of the lower seeded teams. We've mentioned Providence. How can you not like the way Houston's playing as well in a tough AAC, beating Wichita State, very nearly beating Cincinnati? I think they're for real. But I'm going to go with Providence. I'm going to go with Providence over North Carolina, and because a number 7 seed or higher has actually made the Final Four now. I believe it's like 5 or 6 straight years. Hey, I got to pick one. Well, if I would have taken South Carolina last year, I think I would have been laughed out of the farm also. So I'll take Providence as my 7 seed or higher to make the Final Four here. Over Gonzaga in the Elite Eight.
Boy. Well, first of all, you picked the wrong 7. If I'm not taking a 7, but that's not the 7 that I'm picking. We'll get to that later on.
Well, it's a 7 or higher.
Well,
it's a 7 seed it's a 7 seed or higher is made, I think, 5 or 6 straight Final Fours.
Now, or you want me to wait till we get there?
No, you can wait.
All right, we'll wait. I want to keep people on their edge of their seat. I think that this bracket has some outstanding games in store for us. I think the Houston-Michigan game is going to be an all-timer. That just seems like a real gritty game between a couple of standout guards. You got Abdul Rahman going against Rob Gray. That just sounds, excellent to me. I like Michigan to squeak by that one, and I like them to squeak by North Carolina. I'm not in on Providence. I think Providence loses to Texas A&M. Like I mentioned, I didn't think that they deserved to be a 10 seed. I like Ohio State to get past Gonzaga, and I like Ohio State to get past Xavier. So yeah, I like Ohio State, Michigan as a 5 versus 3 Elite Eight and a huge rivalry game. Could you imagine that? It's a shame that's going to be out west in LA, because could you imagine the crowd in an Ohio State, Michigan Elite Eight game?
Ohio State. All right. So that is definitely a shocker to have Ohio State in the.
But I like Michigan to beat them. I like Michigan in the Final Four.
Well, considering how Ohio State has been playing, that was the big drawback for me. A month ago, I would have been all over this. But I don't know. I mean, and it's, look, I am going to take some talented teams that haven't necessarily played their best to do something. So it's not necessarily that. And by the way, I say this in college football, and I'll say it here in college basketball. Just because I don't think teams deserved to get in doesn't mean that when they're in that I'm going to discount them. So that's a completely different story. But with Ohio State, that's the thing for me. It's just I really liked them a month ago, but I'm just a little bit concerned with the way they're playing.
Well, I just think that Ohio State, first of all, they're not the best 5 in the field. I already said Kentucky's the best 5 in the field. The thing is, they have the easiest one in the field in Xavier. I think Gonzaga is a very good basketball team, but I think extremely beatable, especially what we've seen. And then, the bottom of the bracket with North Carolina and Michigan is much, much heavier. With Houston, North Carolina, Michigan,
and Providence
significantly.
That is tough.
And Providence.
That is tough.
Is significantly heavier than the Xavier, Ohio State, Gonzaga being the 3 top seeds of the top half of this bracket. That's the only reason I think Ohio State gets into this Elite Eight, because they don't have to go by too much. I mean, look, Xavier's a very good basketball team, and people are counting them down because they're a 1 seed. You'll see a bunch of idiots that go pick Missouri over Xavier. I'm not saying Steve's an idiot. I know he likes Missouri, but I come on, Missouri is not going to go beat Xavier. I do think Ohio State is the first team that really has that shot to beat Xavier.
Well, that's how Les Porter plays. It plays lights out. Porter, we have no idea after a couple of games back.
We have no idea. We have absolutely no idea.
And he's an X factor.
Zero clue.
And he's an X factor type.
That's why I can't believe that they got an 8. They got an 8 over. I mean, look again. What's the difference if you're the 8 or the 9? There's really you're playing the same game with the same possible matchups regardless. But they could have been a 10, and a team like let's say Texas could have been the 8 or something like that, or Butler could have been the 8. It's weird that they got the 8.
Well, look, I think the other thing, too, is the reason, because I do like this. I think that the West and the Midwest are the 2 toughest regions. My favorite region is the West. That I just think it's going to be very tough. Because if you liked Ohio State, like in another region, I'd be a little bit more for that. It's just that for them to have to beat Xavier and Gonzaga.
I know, but I think that the Xavier Gonzaga combination is the second weakest one for behind, of course, probably my national champion. We'll get to in a second. But I think Auburn is the biggest fraud for.
Okay, sounds good. So, by the way, one of the reasons why, besides just the run they made in the Big East tournament, one of the reasons I do like Providence is you've got 3 seniors out of your top 4. You have a major impact player that can drop big shots like Cartwright. That is a nice combination when you're looking for someone in your bracket to win a game, like a lower seed, like, you get into these really small teams. That's what you need to look at. Look for teams like Bucknell, teams like Providence, teams that have seniors, that have returning starters like South Dakota State that were at the tournament last year, that are coming back again and are older. That's the best way to kind of look at, especially this year with all the parity. If you can, because the reason there's parity is because a lot of guys have graduated. So so those smaller type schools can, if they're veteran teams, they can maybe now take advantage and pull off a couple more upsets that you didn't think of. So anyway, that was my reasoning with Providence. So you have now Arizona and Michigan. And I have Virginia and Providence. Let's now go to the East and the Midwest. And we'll start up in East. And look, I've said this before, that you can't put 3 number 1 seeds in. All right? So, or at least I'm not going to. So
I have 1 number 1 seed in. So let's leave it at that.
Yeah, so since I already have my number 1 seed, one of them in Virginia. And I look, what did I just say about ESPN? I said, you're with these guys all year, you're going to think the same way. So, and you kind of talk each other into things, and you agree with the stuff. And I know we both like the number 1 seed to win the national championship. We'll get to in a little while because we've talked about them. But so I've already got that one, and I've got Virginia. So that means I got to knock Villanova out. I don't want to, but to me, I think it's more of, again, I'm not putting 3 in. And I'm just going to give Virginia the shot this year. So I have to knock Villanova out. So the question is, where do I knock Villanova out?
In the Sweet 16, baby.
No, I'm not going to knock them out in the Sweet 16. So, no, I'm not going to. But, it's probably the way I should go. But that is the logical thing for them to get knocked out in the Sweet 16. But I'm going to get them. I'm going to pull off an upset and have them get knocked off by Virginia Tech in the second round. But I'm gonna. I already told you I like West Virginia. So, but my surprise team in the East, all right, to make it to the Elite Eight is going to be UCLA.
Oh, I love it. I literally have the winner. So you know how in the bracket challenges in the pool it says St. Bon or UCLA. I have that in the Elite Eight as well. Oh man, that's perfect. I actually, so my Elite Eight is Wichita State versus what I expect to be UCLA. Because Florida has struggled mightily there week 6. I think Texas Tech, people have seen how you can beat them in the last 3-4 weeks. It seems like it's easier than expected when they were like the number 3 team in the country. I thought that they actually could have been. I thought Arizona should have been a 3 over them. So I think that they could beat them as well. So I have Butler over Arkansas. I have a lot of upsets in this region, and
it is the easiest one.
I have your boys going down. Actually, I have Murray State over West Virginia.
Oh, you're nuts.
Well,
you're nuts. I like that. Murray State.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
All right.
Murray State. They have the coaching. Now new coaching staff. And this is just a team that just seems to find a way. They were outstanding. They dominated that conference all year long.
Okay.
But I have them going down to Wichita State.
That's your 12. And that's that is like a 12 over 5 deal.
12 over 5 for Murray State. Yep. I like Wichita State to beat them though to get to the Sweet 16. I like Wichita State to beat Villanova, and I actually like Wichita State to beat UCLA. So I like Wichita State. So I have 2 4s in my Final Four already.
All right. So you're going to have Wichita State over, who'd you say, over who?
Over UCLA or St. Bonaventure. I also think St. Bonaventure, when Jalen Adams plays as well as he can, he is good enough to guard Keenan Evans. So I think him and Keenan Evans, that'd be an outstanding matchup too. If St. Bonaventure got past Florida, to see that guard matchup there. So I wouldn't count out St. Bonaventure against Texas Tech. I think it'd be tough for them to beat Purdue. They don't have the size that Purdue has, but UCLA certainly does.
All right. So Wichita State, though, you have them in the Final Four as a
2
4
4s and a 3 so far.
All right. And then, as I mentioned, we both are going to have Kansas in, as we've talked about the last couple of shows over the last few weeks. This is a Kansas team that has just gotten better as the year has worn on. They have veteran leaders on their team. Graham, as we've talked about before, is a guy that can drop down big shots. They're a very good three-point shooting team. They're a very good free throw shooting team. So they've got all the ingredients. And you know what? I'm actually very surprised that as big as a team they are, as a program that they are, that all of these experts picking, it's like everybody's just like, nobody's even thinking about them. And I think it's because they're in the same little region as Duke and Michigan State.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about Kansas, and this is something we've talked about throughout the year, is, yeah, they have Devontae Graham. You could call him a star if you wanted to, pick out the guy who you could call a star. But they're such a great balanced team that if Devontae Graham has a terrible night, there's plenty of other players that can pick up the slack. There's not a lot of teams that are like that. There really aren't a lot. If Trayvon Blewett has a bad night, Xavier's done. Nova is like that. They can, if Michael Bridges has a bad night, they're okay. Virginia's like that as well. But Duke, we've seen when Bagley has bad games or Bagley's not playing, they're a different team. North Carolina is a different team when Joel Berry struggles. Purdue is an absolute different team when the Edwards and Haas, combination doesn't work well. So I think that's why I like Kansas, and I'm surprised. But you'll be surprised who I have them getting over. I have a 12-13 game in the second round with New Mexico State getting past Clemson and Charleston over Auburn.
Okay, well, so that means that you had who playing Kansas?
I have New Mexico State playing Kansas in the Sweet 16.
All right, and then the bottom half of that. I'm gonna have a
all chalk in the bottom half.
Well, I'm gonna do different. This is where I'm gonna have one of my first round upsets. Because I don't have a whole lot of first round upsets. I have South Dakota State.
Bucknell, baby, right?
I have South Dakota State. I've got South Dakota State, and that's it. Oh, and Bucknell. Those are my 2 first round upsets. Again, I'm gonna take a Bucknell team. As I said before, they're 2-time defending champs. Last year, they played a great game in the first round against West Virginia. Only lost by 6.
Great defensively, great offensively. Zach Thomas. If they were to beat Michigan State, Zach Thomas would be one of those guys that people talk about for years to come in the tournament.
Yep, Zach Thomas, Nana Foland, Stephen Brown. These are three seniors who were there last year, average over 15 points a game, all three of them.
Destroy the conference.
Yep.
Destroyed the conference.
So this is and Michigan State has proven, again, as we talked about before, down by almost 30 to Northwestern, overtime to Rutgers. They are susceptible. This is not a team that can just turn it on with talent to win. So I think they're susceptible. So that's why I'm going to go with the upset there. But my other long shot besides Providence making it to the Final Four and UCLA making it to the Elite Eight is going to be Arizona State. I'm going to have Arizona State because of the upset, because Bucknell beating Michigan State. So I'm going to have Arizona State only needing to win one big game over Duke, because I don't like Duke. I just think Duke is susceptible, just like Michigan State. So I'm going to take Arizona State losing to Kansas in a rematch in the Midwest Final, and I'll have Kansas in the final. And you're going to have Kansas against who in the regional final?
This was against Duke, but the toughest decision I had to make, I think, in the bracket was the Rhode Island Duke game. I think Rhode Island's going to be ready to play after losing to Davidson the way they did. They've got another very senior-based team. E.C. Matthews seems like he's been there for 7,000 years.
So that's your separate bracket. So when you put in the bracket, when you're using two brackets, you're going to put Rhode Island one and Duke the other.
I don't do two brackets. I do one bracket and I stick with it. But I like Kansas to beat Duke, and it's tough.
Okay.
It's tough because I wanted to have Kansas beating Rhode Island, but I couldn't do it. I would have thought too much that I was being too Maryland Terrapin biased there. So
all right.
I stuck with it.
All right. So
and I only have 3 out of my 8 Final Four teams. Only 3 of them are a 1 and a 2, and they're both in this bracket, and 2 of them are in this bracket.
All right, now it's time to finally get our third opinion, well, actually our fourth, bringing in our blackatologist, Jamal Murphy, to the show. See, I can use the term blackatologist now as often as I like on this show because it is the blackatologist time of year, isn't it, Jamal?
Finally. I've been waiting for it all year, and it's finally here. Thanks for having me.
Well, good to have you on. I know you were doing a show earlier. Both you and Scott did shows just before this show. So Scott was doing the show in Montana. He rode in on a horse. How about you, Jamal? Where'd you do your show?
In good old New York City, Midtown Manhattan. About that, long way from Montana.
All right. So we already gave our.
I wasn't in Montana.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I would go to Montana just to check off the state. I want to hit all 50 states.
Sure.
Oh boy. I think you'd have to convince me that there was something really exciting going on for me to see in Montana.
Well, you can. I don't know. Like I said, just go to a rodeo. I mean, you can do all sorts of things. Go see the Grizz. Go see the Grizz. That's what the Grizz are all the rave in Montana right now. Jamal, just quickly, our final 4 picks. Scott has Arizona and Michigan and Wichita State and Kansas. So he's got that would be a nice rivalry game, Wichita State and Kansas. I have Kansas and West Virginia and Providence. And what are you going to do as we go quickly through the regions with you in the South? Any upsets there? And what's your Elite Eight?
All right. I mean, upsets-wise, I like Davidson in that Kentucky matchup.
Nice.
That's Wright State, I think, has a chance to get Tennessee. I know Tennessee's had a great year. I'm just not a big believer. So I like those 2 upsets in the South.
Okay.
Elite Eight. So I guess you're asking regional final. I'm going to go Arizona and, believe it or not, Texas.
Ooh.
Well, Arizona, Texas is going to be in the Sweet 16.
That would be Sweet 16?
Yep.
No, that would be the Elite Eight.
No, it's Sweet 16. Isn't it? Oh, that's Elite Eight because, okay, got it. I was looking at I got my thing crossed off.
Sheet, so you could be right.
No, you're right. No, it's Arizona.
You are right.
Arizona's at the
Jamal
top.
is right.
I'm using the
We'll
smaller
get rid of
one.
that in post.
So Arizona, Texas, and that means
Arizona,
that Texas is going to wind up. So you're discounting Tennessee from the Wright State upset, and Texas, I guess, to beat Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Cincinnati fan. In fact, it'd be a grind them out 50, 60-point game, probably anybody's game. So I get Texas
That's the
shot
only
there
game
too.
Cincinnati plays.
Right, and Texas too.
All right, and then
That's true.
and then Arizona. Will Arizona beat Virginia?
Yes, I got Arizona beating Virginia. I really like Virginia this year, but I think Arizona's just going to be too much for them.
All right, let's
Yeah,
go.
and who does Virginia have that could stop DeAndre Ayton? That's the biggest thing it comes down to, and the answer is nobody.
Who does anybody have, really?
All right.
Well, we'll see when we get to the Final Four picks if I agree with anything. If it's that.
Well, again, though, I mean, we'll see how it goes in the tournament. Not to say it's going to be completely different, because look, I even though I'm picking Virginia, I'm not saying Arizona can't beat them. That could easily happen. But it's how rare is it in college basketball for a team that's dominated by a big man to win a championship? It just doesn't happen in college basketball very often. It's a guard-driven league.
Hey, before we move on, Jamal, what's your driving force for Davidson over Kentucky?
My what?
Your driving force. Your reason.
My reason. Okay. My driving force.
They beat Rhode Island 2 straight games.
Just how well they're playing at this time.
Yep.
I watched that win they had over St. Bonaventure, and then and really McKillop, their coach, just a great coach.
That's a good point.
He's been through this before.
Got to have a good coach.
He's had success in the tournament before. Besides being a great coach. And Kentucky, again,
they're young.
I'm not sold on Kentucky all year. I know they picked it up, come tournament time, but they're still a bunch of freshmen. So
True.
I feel like Davidson can frustrate them, and Davidson is not going to be in. So that's my driving force.
I was thinking about that. I mean, that was something I was really thinking about myself. Was taking Davidson. They're hot. They've got Peyton Aldridge, who's a senior. They're a good 3-point shooting team. And again, Kentucky is very young. They've never been in this experience before, and they're going to be expected to beat Davidson as a freshman team. That I think they'll be more dangerous, if they play, say, Arizona, than they would playing Davidson. I think Davidson definitely gives them a scare because everybody's going to expect them to win. All right, let's go to the West. Well, who do you got in the Final Four? Arizona, Texas. Arizona, yeah. Let's go to the West. This is my favorite region. So who are you going to go with in the West? Who's your Final Four in the region? And do you have any upsets?
The region, I'm going to go with Ohio State.
Ooh.
And Xavier in the Sweet 16.
Okay. Thought you were going to go with Scott. Take Ohio
Carolina.
State in the Elite Eight. North Carolina and who? You there, Jamal?
Yeah. You lost me?
Yeah. North Carolina versus who?
North Carolina, Michigan.
All right. Who you got in the Final Four for that region?
I got, I'll take Michigan to play Ohio State.
Scott.
Oh, boy.
You and Scott. Well, Scott actually
Jamal,
went ahead with.
Jamal, were you just secretly listening were you just on the line listening to everything I was saying when before you called in? Because we're basically getting the same bracket here, bud.
Yeah,
hey,
you're
great
both.
mind.
Well, unless you take Ohio State in the Final Four.
No, I'm gonna go Michigan in the Final Four.
All right. See, I'm glad that my favorite team, I picked against them, and you guys picked them, because that's perfect. Because see, I don't have to show bias, and you guys did the right thing by putting Michigan in the Final Four. All right, Arizona, Michigan in the Final Four. So both you guys have Arizona, Michigan. That's okay. I mean, me and you both have Kansas winning the national championship. All right, let's go, Jamal. Let's go to the East. And by the way, do you have any upsets in the first round in the West?
In the West, upsets in the West. I like San Diego State's chances. It's a minor upset. That's about it. I wouldn't call Providence an upset, so no.
Okay. Let's go to East and give me your little, Final Four there.
Same thing. Yeah.
I'm gonna go West Virginia, Villanova.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Chalk,
and,
right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Not really.
But I'll go. I don't like this region. I'm gonna go Purdue. Actually, no. I'll go Butler, Florida.
Wow. Okay. Florida and Butler. All right. And who's in there?
Coming out of there, I go Villanova will beat Florida and get to the Final Four.
Okay. So Villanova. So you didn't have Wichita State. So you guys are finally different.
About time, Jamal.
There you go. Well, that's good. That's a completely different. Even though both you guys take Butler, I'm going to take Arkansas in that Butler-Arkansas matchup. So let's go to any upsets in the East.
How
about Marshall?
No, I'm not I'll go Wichita State there. I think they're fine.
Okay.
The only upset, I might go with Stephen F. Austin. I'm still thinking that over.
How about Cal State Fullerton over Purdue? That would get Painter fired.
I wouldn't be shocked by that, but I'm not going to pick it.
Hey, Jamal. It's not really fair to call it an upset, but I think that I'd like the winner of St. Bonnie, UCLA. I know you have Florida in the Elite Eight, but I think both of those teams would really give Florida an absolute run for their money.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a good game. I like Florida because they've been there. They were there last year. They had moments in the season where they really played well. They were inconsistent, but when it came to big games, they seemed to play really well. So I think they'll figure out how to get it done, and this is their time of year right now.
All right. Yeah, I think some of the guys that they missed on the team last year must be the issue. I mean, they just are. To me, I don't think they're the same team. That's why I like UCLA in the Elite Eight. And, of course, I think we all agree that this is a little mini region area where a nice little under-the-radar team can get in because of Purdue. So that's why we're all, trying to take another team.
No, I agree.
All right. So, and what were you going to say? Were you saying something, Scott?
No, I said Arkansas has a chance, too. I mean, Butler or Arkansas, I think, has a chance to beat Purdue.
Okay.
That's probably my favorite of the 7-10 matchups, actually. I think that's going to be an outstanding basketball game.
All right, let's go to the Midwest. Your Final Four there.
I'm going to say, let me see. I'm going to go surprise here. Seton Hall.
All right.
And Seton Hall, Clemson.
Ooh, very nice.
Well, that would absolutely debunk my region here.
Okay.
So, I like the Seton Hall pick. This is a very, very good senior-based team. I think that had they been, in possibly Virginia's bracket or Xavier's bracket,
yeah.
I think I would have had Seton Hall as an 8, beaten one of those two teams because of the experience. I just don't think they have enough depth to beat Kansas.
Yeah, plus I also just didn't like the way to tell you the truth, I thought they should have played a lot better, though, at the end of the season. They had that losing streak at one point. I mean, they had such a veteran team. I just really expected more from them. But I agree. Kansas, since we like them so much, it was impossible for me to even consider Seton Hall making the Sweet 16. But you're going to go ahead and do that, Jamal, and you got Clemson. And you know what? I like the Clemson. I like the Clemson win over New Mexico State. I know a lot of people. I know Scott likes New Mexico State. A lot of people like New Mexico State in that spot. I'm surprised you're going with New Mexico State, Scott. You've tried to talk me up for Clemson for the past month, and then you go against them.
It's just a big sell, man. I'm just trying to look. I don't like the matchup.
Okay.
I don't like the matchup. It comes down just to that. I think that the injury to Grantham is just devastating, and this is New Mexico State's a pretty good defensive team with some prolific talent, and I'm just surprised that they were that Clemson got to 5 anyway. But I think that a guy like Zach Lofton is just outstanding and really, really tough to guard. He can he's not to mention he shoots. He scores a lot from 3, but he could also, he likes that foul line jumper. He's a great free throw shooter. And then Jamario Jones, just another really good player for them, and I think that they have a really good shot.
Yeah, well, I mean, nobody probably used the transfer rule better than New Mexico State with both Zach Lofton and also A.J. Harris, two of their top players that came in, and they didn't miss a beat really there. And, of course, Chris Jans took over Greg Marshall's assistant from Wichita State, so success first year. Sweeps New Mexico. The big win was Miami. They beat Davidson. They beat Illinois. Now, there's all that good. Now, the only thing
remember, New Mexico State is the number 10 defensive team in the country. Now, I know it doesn't mean that much coming out of the WAC, but it's still, it still goes for something that they are very, very aggressive defensively. They try to force a lot of turnovers, a lot of steals.
Well, that'll be an ugly game then against Clemson. That'll be an ugly.
And that's why I like them. That's why I like them. I like teams with the upset with the higher seeds in uglier games than you do in shootouts.
The only thing that I want to flip it though with New Mexico State is keep in mind the Miami win, the Davidson win, the Illinois win were on all neutral courts, weren't true road games, and they've lost to Seattle, Utah Valley, and San Diego. So
you never know which New Mexico State you're going to get. That's the fun about the Aggies.
Let's go to the bottom half of that region then, Jamal. You have Seton Hall, Clemson, and then you've got the bottom end where there's Duke and Michigan State. Are they going to play?
Yeah, I'm going. Yeah, they're playing. I'm going to go chalk with that. And then I'm going to take Michigan State out of the region.
All right. And who are they beating, by the way?
They're going to beat
the Hall or Clemson? Clemson?
Clemson.
All right. So Michigan State, Villanova, Arizona, Michigan. And Scott's got Arizona, Michigan, Wichita State, Kansas. And I have Virginia, Providence, Kansas, West Virginia. I am going to go, again, me and Scott, we have the same national champion. So I have Kansas over Virginia. And Scott, you've got Kansas over who?
Arizona. It's just, again, it's tough. I don't think anybody to Azubuike can stop DeAndre Ayton.
Oh, yeah. That would be a good matchup. Yeah, sure.
It would be an outstanding matchup, and I think that he's got the defensive prowess to do it. I don't think Mo Wagner, as good as he is, can stop DeAndre Ayton. I think that, look, again, if DeAndre Ayton has a bad night, they're in trouble. They're lucky that Trier is back and willing to play, because if this team was Trierless, they would have probably been like a 6 seed. And then people would have been picking them out the wazoo as a 6 seed. But I like Kansas over Arizona. I think the Arizona-Michigan game is an all-timer, an outstanding game, a real close one. And then Kansas, by something like 5-7 over Arizona.
All right, Jamal, Arizona, Michigan, Villanova, Michigan State.
I'm going to go with Arizona making it to the final.
Okay.
Shout out to the FBI. And I'm going to go Villanova. It matches up with them. Villanova wins again, second time in 3 years.
Cats against cats. And you got Villanova, one cat over another cat. So we got Kansas and Villanova here on the show, a couple of number 1 seeds. Now I'm going to go through these questions before we end the show, because this is where we're going to find out about some of these upsets, true upsets. So let me go through this. Let's see, where am I? Here we go. All right, so I'll tell you what. Let me start with we already know that. So let me go to the double-digit seed. I already have a double-digit seed to answer this question to reach the Sweet 16 since I have Providence in the Final Four. So I'm going to ask you first, Scott. Give me one double-digit seed to reach the Sweet 16. I don't know if you already have one in your bracket, but
I got New Mexico State. I have New Mexico State getting through Clemson and Charleston. I don't know about you, Jamal, but I think Auburn is a fraud 4 at this point. Didn't deserve to be on the same, on the same level as an Arizona and Wichita State and Gonzaga. I think they don't belong in a category with those other 3 teams. So I like New Mexico State, and I also said if UCLA, if they get through St. Bonaventure, that I like them, that they can get to the Elite 8. So I could have 2 teams in the Sweet 16, one in the Elite 8.
So St. Bonaventure doesn't count then?
Well, I think that it's St. Bonaventure. I think St. Bonaventure loses to Texas Tech. I think it's a great guard matchup I think it's a great guard matchup.
Well,
That'd be
just so you know,
unbelievable.
because when you said UCLA / St. Bonaventure, so that actually wasn't a team, was it? That was just the way it's written down on the thing.
That's because when you pick the bracket, when you actually go through
yeah.
on the website, it says St. Bonaventure. I think St. Bonaventure gets past Florida. I don't think they get past Texas Tech.
Okay. So New Mexico State is your double-digit seed to reach the Sweet 16. You know what? UCLA. I was thinking about UCLA. I was thinking about Charleston, and so I do think they're a good possibility. I really do. But I'm going to go ahead and take Auburn to get to the Sweet 16. But I do think Charleston is a pretty decent. I don't even know what the line is. I mean, it's probably a pretty big line. I'd probably even throw a few bucks on the money line. I've got to believe they're getting. I would think 8 or 10 points, I would think. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think they're worth throwing some money on the money line there in the first round. All right, so Jamal, what is your double-digit seed to reach the Sweet 16?
I think I got 2, barely making the double-digit standard. I got 2 in Texas.
You have Texas and who?
And Butler.
All right. Those are the 2 double-digit seeds, Butler and Texas, and UCLA and New Mexico State. All right. And I think is Providence the only one that I have? I have, Providence and UCLA are the only 2. No, Providence, UCLA, and Arizona State. So I have 3. Providence, UCLA, Arizona State. Okay, let's get to pick a number 4 seed or higher to win the national championship, Mr. Scott.
Well, it's got to be Arizona. So I've just gone on and on about Arizona this entire hour and 15 minutes. I'd be a fool to go against it right now.
So Arizona over Washington or over Wichita State. Yep, because they're then again they're both losing to Kansas, but you prefer Arizona over Wichita State.
Yeah, I think Arizona's got the best chance.
Okay.
And like I said, I think Gonzaga is a good 4 too. I just think that it's a tough situation for them. With Ohio State is a better Ohio State in my opinion is a better 5 than Auburn is a 4. So it's just tough for me to justify anybody else. If I had to go with one other team, one that could really fly out of nowhere, I kind of like Rhode Island. I don't think they're going to win the national championship, but I like the coaching, and I like I said, it was really tough for me to pick Duke over them. But
Rhode Island's a 7 seed, so that could be the next question. So chill out. Let's go to the futures.
Well, you said 4 or higher.
Yeah, but that was that question. You already answered it. So let me get to this, because the next question is a 7 seed or higher to reach the Final Four. So, you did like Rhode Island, right? You said Rhode Island or Duke in the Elite 8, didn't you?
Well, it would have been, Rhode Island or Duke.
And they're a 7 seed.
Both of them that beat Michigan State. So I do like Rhode Island. I don't like them to beat Kansas. I think that's a cruel.
Yeah, but if you get them to the Elite 8, that would be your pick.
Sure.
That would probably be your 7 seed or higher, right? To get to the Final
correct.
Four. Okay.
That is correct. Yours is going to be Providence, which is silly.
Okay. Let's get to. By the way, Gonzaga's 22-1 to win national championship. Arizona is 18, and Wichita State is 44-1. And again, these are all subjective. I'm using the UWager championship odds, but they're all different all over the place. So let's go to you, Jamal. Give me your 4 seed or higher to win the national championship.
I would say, I agree with Arizona. Obviously, I have them in the championship game, so they could win it all. But I'll go with Florida as a 6.
Okay. And then Rhode Island was Scott's 7 seed or higher to reach the Final Four. Did you have another team in there? Where's Ohio State? What seed are they?
I'm going to say I go Seton Hall at an 8, and again, Butler at a 10.
Seton Hall and Butler, okay. And just Rhode Island for you, Scott?
You know what? I like the Butler call. I think that, if the right things, go, I think that I have them beating Purdue.
And you got UCLA too. UCLA would also be a good one in the Final Four since you have them in the Elite 8.
Right. So I think that, UCLA or Butler, I think that either one of those teams can beat Wichita State or Villanova on the right night.
Yeah, I just don't know today. I'm not really sold on. I think Butler's done a really nice job over the years with their coaching situation, and it's very hard to just year after year to just keep digging and finding good coaches. And I don't know. I mean, they've had a couple of decent wins this year, so that's been okay. But that's just the one thing. I don't know. I don't know if I'm sold on Jordan. What about you? I guess you guys are. You think he's okay?
Yeah, I think he's. I don't think he's. I'm drawing a blank on Holtman, right?
Yeah, Holtman. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or Brad Stevens.
Obviously,
yeah.
as good a coach as he is, he just won Big Ten Coach of the Year. But I think he proved a lot to me at the beginning of the year. I thought Butler was a little down, and he got them to come around and be basically the typical Butler team we've come to know and love. So I think he's a keeper.
Yeah, they beat what? They beat Ohio State and Villanova, right? Those were two of their bigger wins this year.
Yep.
Okay, so next question is, give me a true Cinderella to win the national championship.
Whoa.
So, Scott, you want to – let me see if I see anybody on here. That Rhode Island, probably, right? 175-1?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, it's a Cinderella for a reason. I mean, that's what are you going to do?
I mean, yeah.
They would fit. That would fit as a true Cinderella.
I also wouldn't be shocked with Nevada, if we're being totally honest, too. I thought that they could have been – if they would have won their conference championship, they could have been a 5 or a 6. But losing that knocks them to a 7. So I wouldn't be shocked at all with Nevada or Rhode Island.
All right, Nevada at 250 and Rhode Island at 175 would be Scott's Cinderella teams. Jamal, go ahead and give us Cinderella team to win the national championship, where somebody can run around and dance on the floor like Jimmy V.
I'd have to go with Florida or Butler.
Yeah, I'm not okay. Florida is more of a long shot.
You can't give them Florida.
No, Florida's a long shot. That's what I said. Butler would be a Cinderella.
Okay, Butler. Give me Butler.
Because they're not going to call Florida Cinderella. So, but Butler is. We'll give you Butler at 175-1, just like Rhode Island.
What is Florida? What are the odds on Florida?
100-1.
So Butler has better odds than Florida?
Yep, 175-1.
Wow.
Almost double, just like Rhode Island. And by the way, Seton Hall was also 175-1. So that's another team you have there.
They're not disciplined enough to get the entire way.
And of course, my Cinderella would be Providence at 220-1. And let's see if I see anybody else. Probably not. I don't think I'm going to take Bucknell. So let's go to what's the next question? I think we've done most of them. And the last one is if you guys, I don't know if you had if you had $100 to wager on your picks, what would it be on these futures I sent you? Did you take a look at that, Scott?
Yeah, I did. If I had 100, I mean, well,
Kansas
Arizona,
makes a lot of sense because they're 12-1. So you make $1,200. You would clear $700 right there.
Yeah. Arizona as well at 18. Ohio State at 80. I like Ohio State at 80 because they're having the Elite Eight. I like Houston at 100 too. I think that Houston is an outstanding team. And then if I'm gonna, let's see.
They would be a Cinderella. Probably. I would think Houston might be classified as a Cinderella, right?
Yeah, in some respects, yeah. I think that they should have been a little bit more respected.
Sure.
Considering that Missouri is higher than them, and Missouri, we don't know anything about what this Missouri team's going to look like in this tournament. Seeing as we've got a guy who hasn't played at all, who's going to be expected to play multiple games or 2 games in a 3-day span. Have to play basically. He'll have to play 35 minutes if they're going to win against a Xavier or an Ohio State. So I like Michigan at 15-1 too. So why
Michigan,
not? So I'll go Kansas at 12, Michigan at 15, Arizona at 18,
Ohio State at 80 and Houston at 100.
Ohio State at 80 and Houston at 100.
All right. Jamal?
I love Arizona at 18-1.
Yeah, outstanding.
Okay. And let me see what you've got. You've got Michigan. You want them at 15-1?
Or North Carolina, actually. I think those are pretty decent 15-1.
Michigan and North Carolina at 15-1. Okay.
And then we look for just a wild. And then, Florida at 100-1. Why not?
Florida. And that one more team.
One more?
You want Ohio State? or Texas? Or actually, you know what? You could take Villanova to make sure you get your money back.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Because I do think Villanova's the
national championship pick, so you might as well take them.
Yeah, I'm going to take Villanova 5-1.
Yeah, because if they win the championship, if they win the championship, then you actually you would beat both of us. We'd be down 500 and you'd be breaking even.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So sometimes you don't have to. It's not about making money. It's about just making sure that you leave there, as you know, Jamal, because you're going to be at Vegas this time around.
Yeah, I will be in Vegas. The best place to watch the first 2 rounds.
Awesome. So you're going to be the West Coast time zone, and of course we're going to do our next show. Actually, I'm going to do a show with Mark Lawrence. He is a legendary handicapper and is definitely he's working with covers. So I'm going to have him on Wednesday. But you and I, Scott, Jamal, we're all going to do this again on Saturday. I'll see if we can hook up with either Mark or Steve on Saturday as well. And on Saturday, we're going to try to do it sometime, close to noon Eastern, which is what, 9 your Vegas time? Will you still be up at that time, Jamal? After the night before?
I'll definitely be up by 9. The question is, will I be up by 7?
But, yeah. Will you have gone to sleep by then? Or
I'll 8 is probably perfect for me. 8 a.m.
Oh, so 11 a.m.
11 a.m. Eastern. Yeah.
All right, 11 a.m. and we can't complain because you're on the West Coast, so we can't complain about 11.
I might be on the line at that point to get my bets in.
Okay, for Saturday's game. So you'll have to tell us who you're going to pick, of course, after we get to recap the first 4 games and, of course, the first round games on Thursday and Friday, and then we'll preview second round games on Saturday and Sunday on the show on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And what's so awesome? It's awesome for Thursday, Friday. We get that, but it is kind of funny that in just one weekend that we only have 16 teams left. That everything disappears in one weekend.
Right.
And then we break it all down with our Sweet 16 preview the following week. And then we'll be on for the following Saturday with the Elite 8 preview, our Final Four preview, National Championship preview, and so forth. So, all right, Jamal, I'll let you go first. Appreciate it. I know you got to run. Are you heading out west right now tonight?
No, I'm heading out Wednesday morning.
Okay. So, and by the way, you were at the Big East tournament, right? Championship game? So that was awesome, right?
Well, no, actually, I went to the ACC championship instead. I feel bad, but
you blew it. You blew it.
I had to do it. I'm a Big East guy, but I was a traitor.
So that boring Virginia North Carolina game against the excitement. By the way, and Scott, you were watching live, right? You watched the game live?
I was watching them both side by side.
Okay, so. Tell me how absolutely bogus that call was at the end of the regulation on Providence.
The charge?
No. That whatever. I didn't even know what it was. It was like 25 seconds to go. They're up by 2, and they it was like one of those little tiny screens or something. And the guy called I don't even know what he called, a holding or something. And Brunson goes to the line for 2, ties the game, and they go to overtime.
I do.
It was so eerily similar to the Nova Providence, semifinal game we went to 3 years ago, where Arcidiacono got fouled and made 2 free throws to win it.
I remember that.
With 3 seconds left. You remember that?
Why, it was a bogus call?
Yeah, it wasn't perfect. Let's put it that way.
So Villanova seems to get those calls, huh?
I'm not saying.
They do.
All right. Well, I mean, hey, I lost out on $100 on that one. I had a nice little thing going. I had a nice little parlay going with the Providence 8-1 money line as the final game on my parlay, and I was very upset. But anyway, okay. So we'll talk on Saturday. Jamal, I'll let you go first, as I said. Thanks a lot for coming on in here, and we'll talk to you again on Saturday. Safe trip out to Vegas.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me again.
You got it. Thanks, Jamal. That's Jamal Murphy. Mr. Resident Blackatologist at Blackatologist. That's his Twitter handle. And you could also check him out on iTunes with his, I guess it's his mentor, right? Is his radio mentor, Bill Roden, on Sports Podcast on iTunes. So Steve Merrill, we also want to thank him for coming on from Covers. And once again, go to experts.covers.com and check out all the top handicappers there. And you can also, for limited time only, you're going to get 50% off any purchase at Covers by using the promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. Wager with our sportsbook sponsor, UWager. Click on the banner on the Prime Sports Network website, and if you go ahead and deposit a minimum deposit of $100 or more, you get a special $100 risk-free wager at uwager.eu. And for Steve Merrill, you can email him, steve@prosportsinfo.com, prosportsinfo.com. He'll give you his all of his 63 games for free in his NCAA bracket. It's normally a $25 price tag along with that. But if you email him and mention the show at Prime Sports College Hoops here on the Prime Sports Radio Network, he'll give you it for free, all 63 games in his NCAA bracket. What are you going to be doing, Scott? You going to be taking Thursday and Friday off? I mean, or have they taken you away? Because I can't be like, you can't possibly like work, right? If they say you got to go somewhere and work, you like boycott? You go, I'm not going anywhere. Screw you.
I've been lucky enough to never have to work on the first Thursday. I've had to work on the Friday, and that's sad in itself. But to me, the Thursday is the most important day, and so I'll be sitting on a couch with 3 televisions going, with 3 games on when they're all overlapping, and then Saturday and Sunday again, no working. So I actually don't have. I can watch every single game up until the 24th, which is one of the days of the Elite Eight, but I will have to be unfortunately working a game that day.
Oh, you were already working on Friday? Is that what
I'm
you
not
said?
working on Friday.
Oh, so now you're not. Right now you're not working Thursday or Friday.
No.
That's cool. Good for you. Well, hopefully you won't get that call in a couple of days. Sorry, Scott, you got to go. Somebody got sick. You got to do the hockey regionals, Providence and Northeastern. That's on Friday night. You better watch out. Does your company cover that?
We just did the PU. And they won.
So. Yeah, Boston College is playing, right? They're playing this weekend too? Or this Friday?
Yes, sir, against BU.
Oh, BU, Boston College, Northeastern, Providence. That's a heck of a Final Four.
For the Hockey East, yeah.
That's pretty awesome. All right. Well, hopefully you won't get called for that. All right, so Scott, I appreciate it. And also for our listeners out there, Scott and I will be talking baseball, by the way, before all the College Madness starts in the first round on Thursday at 12:15 or whatever the time they start. We're going to have our final division preview of Major League Baseball at 11 o'clock Eastern. For prime
we're gonna have to keep it to under an hour.
Oh yeah, that's true. We do. We usually go pretty long there. So we'll be talking real fast on Thursday's baseball show, and then don't forget the following Thursday we're going to preview the season, the futures, our picks, and we've got a Covers handicapper on with us as well to get a third opinion. So the next 2 Thursdays, Prime Sports Baseball. So I'll talk to Scott on Thursday at 11, and then of course Jamal and Scott on Saturday at 11. So thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports College Hoops on the Prime Sports Radio Network. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. We'll see you next time.